Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 718, and today's date is July 16th, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government Central Bankers' Recovery Outlook Has Been Quietly Cut by the White House. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. The interview with Sean from SGT Report is now uploaded to the X22 Report Spotlight channel. You can go right to that channel just by going to YouTube, typing in X22 Report Spotlight, or you can come to the x22report.com site. You will see the interview on the right-hand side in the sidebar. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand yesterday the Greek parliament, they voted by landslide in favor of austerity. Yes, they voted on selling off the country, giving none of this to the people, making the people suffer, and they went completely in the opposite direction of what the people wanted. The people came out and said, listen, we don't want this. We don't want austerity. And the government of Greece did not listen to the people. They ignored the people, and they went with a deal that was much worse. Right now, the ECB has raised Greece's emergency liquidity assistance by 900 million euros for a week. And I would say that the government now in Greece is probably going to be reshuffled, because what we're seeing is a lot of the Syriza members, about 32 of them, voted no. Varoufakis, he voted no. And right now, Tsipras might be looking at this saying, you know something, we need to reshuffle, we need to have elections, we need to change things up here. Because right now, this is a central bank puppet government. We are back to where we started. Tsipras did nothing for the people. As soon as the central bankers pushed him and threatened him and told him what to do, he completely folded. He did not work for the people like he promised. And we can see most of the government officials, or I should say government employees, do this. They fold. Iceland, separate case. They decided, you know what, we're not going with the bankers. We're putting them in jail. We're taking over our economy. We're going to create our own money. And this is why they keep it very quiet. You don't really hear anything about Iceland in the corporate media. Now, we're getting word that, and this is coming from a Greek senior banker, that the banks are going to reopen Monday since the austerity package went through in Greece. Now, they've told us this before. They said they were going to open up this Friday, but I guess they canceled that already. Now they're going to say Monday. But we'll have to wait and see if the banks actually open, because I think the Greek people, if they open these banks, I think they're going to run to them and take out the rest of their money. I know I would. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell the people, listen, everything is fine now. You should put your money back in the bank. It's safe there. It's okay. You don't have to worry. Saving account deposits, you're going to earn about 0.25% in Greece. So this is a good reason to put your money back in. I mean, go ahead and do it. We're going to pay on interest on your money. But again, people are still nervous because this is not over yet. I mean, think about it. The Greek people, I should say the Greek government, voted on it, and they said, yes, we'll accept it, but there's still more steps that this has to go through. Germany's parliament must issue a mandate giving Chancellor Angela Merkel the right to negotiate a new bailout deal with Greece. Finland's, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Estonia, and Austria's parliaments also must agree to let their finance ministers negotiate a new deal with Greece. EU finance ministers must negotiate the bailout deal with Greece. Germany's parliament must sign off on the new deal. So there is many different steps that still have to be taken here. And it looks like the bailout itself is at least 4 weeks away, assuming that all of these people agree on it. And we're already starting to hear that they're not agreeing on this. That maybe we aren't going to give a bailout to Greece. And we're going to have to watch this situation very closely because we're hearing from other people like David McWilliams at Ireland's Banking Inquiry. And he's saying Europe's next recession will kill the euro. That they're one recession away from a major implosion in Europe. He believes that Germany is out of control. France is no longer strong enough to offer a counterweight, and Britain is happy to allow the circus to continue as they focus on potentially getting out of the EU. And all these people who are continually saying that we're in a recovery, that everything is fine. No, how can this possibly be? Greece is going to be put into more debt. They have no plan to grow the economy. There's nothing in there to grow the economy. I mean, look at France, look at Portugal, look at Italy. Are their economies growing? Are people going back to work? No, they are not. And we're seeing that this whole thing can fall apart with the snap of a finger. And we are approaching that because they're doing everything they possibly can to keep this system running. We see out in the UK, a report came out, Living Standards, Poverty and Inequality in the UK 2015. And they're saying that even as the parents are working in the UK, guess what? Children are still in poverty, even with working families. And what's very interesting about this is that the numbers of children living in absolute poverty remained unchanged between 2009, 2010, and 2013 to 2014. However, the proportion of kids living in poverty whose parents work rose by 9% over this period. This is a dramatic rise. And people are working and they still can't make it. We're seeing this in many of the countries. We're seeing it here in the United States. People are working and they cannot make ends meet. It's getting tougher and tougher. And as you retire, it's even worse because you're on a fixed income and prices of food, electricity, fuel continually rise. And this is why we see the older generation going out and getting jobs. We see in the Eurozone, the economic sentiment has declined. The ZEW, Center for European Economic Research, said that, the Eurozone fell once again, and it dipped by 11 points over the previous month. People are looking at this saying, this doesn't feel good. Something is wrong. We haven't had jobs in who knows how long. We know the consumer confidence, we know the confidence here in the United States is continually falling also. People are saying, something's wrong with the economy. I just lost my job, I can't find a job. Or I can only get this part-time job. Or I found a job and I'm making a lot less than I did doing the same work. But of course the government is trying to trick us, trying to keep us in the dark. And they keep manipulating all the numbers. I mean, we know what's going on here. And they keep telling us that the initial jobless claims is continually declining. People have jobs. They're not putting in the claims. Well, again, all they're doing is manipulating all these numbers. You have to remember, when you have a part-time job, you're working in retail. Yes, when they look at the unemployment numbers, you're working part-time. You have a full-time job. You're counted as full-time. If you lose that job and you haven't worked a certain number of hours or made a certain number of dollars, you can't apply for unemployment. And this is a huge problem because what it does is it skews the results. And this is what we're seeing. And we've just had the corporate companies, the corporations come out and tell us that, we're laying off 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. And you're trying to tell me that the initial jobless claims continually falls? It's not ticking up whatsoever. And every time it does tick up, it falls dramatically. And this is how you know something is being manipulated. We see the Philly Fed has plunged back to the lows of the year, printing at 5.7, missing expectations of 12. This is the biggest miss since January. It appears the weakness in Q1, Q2, and now Q3, I guess it's more than just the weather or the port closures. I guess we're having some type of major problem in the economy. But again, the government's not going to talk about this. They're not going to tell you that it's the economy. They're going to blame everything else of why this is happening until the economy completely collapses. And then they have to admit it. We understand that retail sales have completely flopped. Just a month or two ago, they told us, oh, we're in a recovery. Retail sales have shot up. But we've shown that, yeah, that's not why retail sales have shot up. When you remove fuel and you remove everything else, we see retail sales completely have fallen apart. And if the economy is indeed improving, the retail sales should be improving as the economy improves. Conversely, a weakening economy environment will be revealed by a declining trend in retail sales. This is particularly the case in the U.S. economy, where consumption comprises nearly of 70% of the overall economy. And when we look at the monthly retail control purchases, you know what we see? We see a downward trend, and it's getting worse. When we look at the years from 1998 to 2004, 1998 being the peak, 2006 being the peak, it dropped. The peak that we've hit right now in 2011 hit 6%. In 2006, it hit 7%. In 2014, it only got up to 4.5%. So what we're seeing is a downward trend. It's getting worse as time goes on. It's getting worse as more and more people are employed. The National Federation of Independent Business also showed much of the same weakness as reported in retail sales. After a strong surge over the last couple of months, driven primarily by hopes of economic expansion, following the cold winter, reality came home to roost as activity failed to emerge. For the month of June, not only did the headline survey fall to 94.1, but it wiped out all the gains in the survey back to January of 2014. So we have seen nothing. We're back to where we started. There is no recovery. Now, we've talked about the auto industry quite a bit. We know the manufacturers have been channel stuffing the auto dealerships to make it look like they're producing. Then they give huge discounts and they hope those subprime people will come and purchase those cars. Because what we're seeing right now is that they're doing whatever they possibly can to bring everyone into the fold. They want them to take out a loan. They want them to keep these bubbles inflating. They want people to go in and purchase these homes and take out more debt. This is why they have the illegals coming over the border. There's many different agendas with this, but one of them is to continue pumping up these bubbles. They want them to go out, get automobile loans. They want them to get their part-time jobs. If they get the jobs, the corporations do not have to pay a $3,000 penalty because they're not part of Obamacare. They want them to join the armed forces. They want them to go back to school, take out student loans. Because they're running out of people in America, and they know to keep this debt bubble inflating, they need more people. And this is why they're letting them over. Because what we're seeing right now in the auto industry is that the prime loans, not the subprime, the good people, right in the middle, is now at an all-time low. Subprime is growing. The rejection rate for auto loans was just 3.3% in June. This is the lowest on record. So what they're telling us since 2008, that everyone's credit is great, people are working, everything is fantastic, they have enough money to purchase these cars, They have no problems making the payment, but we see delinquency rates continually rising. And you have to remember, to get these people in the cars, they will accept anyone right now. And they're extending the loan terms. The average loan term for a new car is 67 months. A used car is 62 months. Loans with terms from 74 to 84 months. They're up 30%. This shows you that people cannot afford these cars. They have to extend the loans because they're making less. They got to keep the payments low. And this is what they're doing. I mean, the average amount financed for a new vehicle is almost $30,000. The average payment for a new vehicle is $488. People cannot afford this. Now, of course, as we know, the U.S. government central bankers, they don't want people to know what is really going on here. They keep the numbers manipulated. They tell you everything is fine. Look at the stock market. Look at the stock market. Look at the stock market. Watch gold and silver. They're suppressed, so you don't have to worry about that. The dollar is fine. Everything's great. And quietly, despite Obama telling us that we're in a recovery, even though you don't feel it, just trust him, we are. The White House in secret slashed the U.S. economic growth forecast, cutting 2015 growth from 3 to 2%, a full percentage, and believe me, it's not even going to hit 2%. That was not all, though. Their forecast sees no recession until at least 2025. Unemployment rate is going to be under 5% for the next decade. There's going to be stable inflation for at least 10 years. And last but not least, a 3-month T-bill rate of over 3% within the next few years. So growth is going to drop, but there will be no rise in unemployment. Rates will surge, but there will be no inflation outbreak. Really? So far, in all their predictions, they have been completely wrong. And I've always said this from the beginning. Whenever these government employees, these central bankers tells us something, it's always the opposite. This reminds me of the Fed coming out, along with the U.S. government back in 2008, telling us they're not forecasting any type of recession in the year of 2008. The U.S. government central bankers, they're saying the same thing. We are not seeing any type of recession, not until 2025. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. The economy cannot continue this way, because all these factors will come to a head and the economy will implode by itself. They will not be able to keep this going. They've run out of bullets. We're at the end game and they know it. And this is why they're continually provoking war. And you have to remember, they're going to continually push new taxes on everyone. I mean, we saw Obamacare. They're still pushing that. We know there's FATCA, where they're going around the world looking for revenue. We understand that they're pushing climate warming, trying to make you believe that you're responsible for the climate change in the earth, but we know that climate is always changing. And when we look at all the information, the raw data, the raw temperatures, we see, yeah, they lied once again. Actually, they told us there'd be no snow at this point. I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of snow. I'm seeing a lot of cold. But already, they're pushing their agenda for more taxes. They're thinking about taxing meat. Why? Because of climate change, of course. We're going to have to tax food a lot more now because of climate change. We're going to have to tax you on the amount of miles that you travel. We're going to have to tax you on pretty much everything because you're to blame for everything that goes on in the world. So we're going to take these taxes from you and we'll keep our system, the central banking system, propped up. This is their scam. This is their plan. And they will keep you in poverty. Because this is what we're seeing right now. Look at the report from the UK. These families are working and their children are still in poverty. Look at Europe. The youth unemployment rate, they can't find work. And if they do, it's part-time. Here in America, we have kids graduating from college. They're not getting these high-paying, great jobs. They're getting these terrible part-time jobs. They're living with their parents. They have to modify their student loans. They're just making it by each day. And a lot of people who've been losing work, they can't find those high-paying jobs. And it's getting worse. And they want to tax you more. God, this reminds me of the Revolutionary War, where people were having a tough time. The British government came in. They imposed more taxes, tried to take away more rights. I feel we're seeing the same exact thing happen once again. Now, out in Japan, we understand Abe is trying to push the new bill through to make Japan not be a passive nation anymore. They want to go and join the fight. And China is out there urging Tokyo to avoid crippling regional peace and security. They're saying, listen, don't do this. Because they're remembering back in 1937 when Japan launched a full-scale invasion into China. And they're worrying about this once again, and we know the reason why this is happening at this point in time. Because we understand that China has to stay contained. This is why the U.S. has set up bases all around China. This is why they're moving that base in Japan to a different location to bring in more advanced military weapons. This is why they're trying to pass this legislation. This is why Japan has built their first warship since World War II. I mean, what we're seeing here is the build-up to the next war. This is why we see military assets being moved all over the place. This is why they're doing this. They're getting ready. And we understand that they're continually pushing and provoking certain countries. They've already mapped it out in the Pentagon document that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, yeah, these are the people. These are the players. We see already they're bringing up MH17. They're trying to put together that tribunal where they're going to look into the entire thing. They're not including Russia, even though there's a UN Security Council resolution that is supposed to be followed. They don't care about that because they're on their propaganda kick right now. And we can see right now what they're doing is they're using propaganda to implicate Russia and the Southeastern people. And you can see they're pushing this by putting out propaganda and starting lawsuits against the Southeastern people in Ukraine. Right now, they're saying relatives of the MH17 crash, they filed a $900 million lawsuit against Ukrainian insurgents over the shooting down of the jet. A writ was filed in Chicago. I wonder who's behind this. And they're claiming that, yeah, the Southeastern people, they're the ones to blame. And Russia is also to blame. They were helping out. They were involved in this. And we can see already they're pushing the propaganda. Why are they doing this at this point? Because it looks like they're getting ready to blame it all on Russia again and the Southeastern people because they want to start this next offensive. And this is where we are headed at this point. Now, Poroshenko, as we know, he's not really following the Minsk II agreement. He sent the draft amendments to the Constitution, to the Constitutional Court, and he wants them to vote on it. But what's happening here is that Kiev right now has not submitted for discussion in the contact group the new proposals on the amendments to Ukraine's constitution. And this is coming from the self-proclaimed areas of Donetsk and Lugansk. They're saying neither the first nor the second drafts were submitted for discussion in the contact group. Both draft laws from July 1st and July 15th contradict the package of measures because they were submitted for consideration with violation of procedure on the Minsk Accord. They're not following it whatsoever. They're bypassing it. And this makes no sense. And what we find out in the constitutional amendments, they make no mention of the southeastern regions. And they were supposed to mention them, giving them special status according to the Minsk II agreement. But they don't. So what is he doing here? Well, he's doing whatever he wants to make it look like he's following the Minsk II agreement. Now, Yatsenyuk is out there, and he came up with a very strange statement that Russia won't succeed in blaming Ukraine for failure of the Minsk agreements. So already they're planning and pushing the propaganda that it wasn't Ukraine who failed to abide by the Minsk II agreement. And they're trying to convince everyone that, no, they're following it along. But we can see a lot of strange things are happening in Ukraine right now. That the right sector is all of a sudden causing problems. We see the constitutional amendment has been submitted, but it doesn't make any mention of the southeastern area. We see the shelling continuing in Ukraine. We see armored military assets being maneuvered and pushed up to the contact line. We see McCain continually out there, and he renewed his call for the U.S. to supply Ukrainian forces with the Javelin anti-tank missile. Now, they asked for this once before by the ambassador, and now we have McCain out there again saying that they need a Javelin, he said. They need it. They have to have it. Why? Why do they need it so badly? Because they are getting ready to push the next offensive. You can see they're getting prepared for this. Now, Russia, through Crimea, they might supply Syria with 200,000 tons of gas. Because Syria needs this gas, and this would be a good place because, as we know, Russia and Syria, they have a very close relationship. Economically, militarily. Putin backs Assad right now, even though the U.S., Saudi Arabia are trying to push Putin away, trying to pay him off, and tell him that, you know what, just to look the other way while we go into Syria. But what's happening in Syria, we see they are definitely getting ready to make their move on Assad. They're getting everything prepared. And if we go back in time, we see that Obama removed all the Syrian government officials from the embassies here in the United States and replaced them with the Free Syrian Army political representatives. That's still in place. And we understand the Islamic State, which is the proxy army of the United States government, Israel, and other nations. They have cleared the path in Syria. They've taken over a huge swath of land. And they're calling it theirs. They want to create safe zones in this area. Now, in these zones, the Free Syrian Army has already come out and said, listen, we are going to substitute the Syrian pound for the Turkish lira. So they're already making a currency swap, saying that, yeah, the Syrian pound is not doing well under the Assad regime. The currency is falling and it needs to be replaced. So we're going to do that in all the areas that we are holding right now. Well, if that's the case, why is the Ukrainian currency still in existence? Because that currency is imploding. What they're doing is they're preparing these areas to be separate and apart from Syria. They're taking it one step at a time. Take over the areas, make them safe zones, change the currency, put up a government in these areas, call it by a different name. And we can see the propaganda is running wild right now. I saw a headline saying that Assad's bombing of civilians is to turn them against the Free Syrian Army. So basically what they're saying is Assad is killing his own people, so they'll go fight the Free Syrian Army and the Islamic State. Does that make any sense whatsoever? It makes no sense, because why would he bomb his own people? The people would turn against him. These are the people that elected him. He had an overwhelming majority who came out and said, yes, we want him as president. And it makes no sense for him to go and bomb his own people. It would make more sense for the Free Syrian Army to bomb those people who support Assad. And this is what we're seeing. They're using propaganda. They're trying to build up the case of human rights violations. Assad using bombs on his own people. They're showing pictures to Congress now. They're trying to convince you that he's using chlorine gas. They're using everything they possibly can to build the propaganda up that he's a bad, bad person and we need to remove him. This is what we are seeing right now. Because as we know, they're getting ready to make their move. Now we understand that Jade Helm is in full swing right now. We understand there are certain states in the South moving out to the West that are involved in this. But what's very interesting about this is that one of their missions is going to be conducted at a power center in the mountains between California and Nevada. They'll be practicing surveillance techniques, defensive operations, and even sabotage operations of power stations, and how to keep control of the population in these areas of when the power goes out. Now we understand, and we've talked about this quite often, that eventually they're going to bring down the grid. I believe back in 2003, when we had that power outage on the East Coast, that was a test case scenario to see how the people reacted, to see if they could do it. And they were able to do it. And then we saw something occur in California where they attacked, I think it was California, they attacked a power station. Armed men. And then out in California, we also had fiber cables cut. They also had drills with cyber attacks hitting the power infrastructure. And we know there's just 9 points around the country. If they hit them, the entire system comes down. Now, I don't think they're going to hit each one. I think they're going to pick selected areas, because when this event occurs, I think what's going to happen here, we're going to see different things occurring. Power outages in certain areas, other physical destruction in cities, where they can say, yes, it was a dirty bomb, it was a chemical weapon, it was a biological weapon, whatever they want to call it. And I think they're going to do this in multiple places at varying times to bring the whole country together to fight the common enemy. And it's just very odd how this is all happening now. The press is not allowed to be involved with this. A lot of the press have asked to be involved and they were rejected. And a lot of people say this is being done from July to September, and many others are saying now it's been extended to November, which is very interesting. And we understand why this is all happening. We understand that the system is collapsing. We understand the economy. Even though the U.S. government, the central bankers are telling us everything is fine, we know from everything that we've been looking at, from the real economic indicators, they don't make sense. What they're telling us and what we're seeing are completely two separate things. And we see that our founding fathers, they warned that all of this was going to happen, that the economy was going to fall apart, the central bankers were going to take over the country, we would have to fight for our freedoms once again. I mean, Thomas Jefferson warned us, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. And we see it happening right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.